Is this officially part of the meeting?
Yeah, you call the meeting to order and then go
All
shut
right, so I'm
off.
going to officially call the meeting to order at 7:30 p.m. And I know this is why you all came here, to hear me talk for a while. This is something we do every year. It's the State of the Town address, basically is a recap of things that happened in the last calendar year. It's actually in the charter that says we're going to do this once every year. So we're going to try to spice it up a little bit. I don't have pictures for every topic, but I have some illustrations to kind of show some of the things I'm going to read about. So it's not the shortest report ever, but I'll try to make it as quick as I can. So, State of the Town. The Charter of the Town of Chestertown states, the mayor during the first quarter of each calendar year shall report to the council the condition of municipal affairs and make such recommendations as he or she deems proper for the public good and welfare of the town. Herein is said report. Financials. The FY 2018 audit for the town of Chestertown was completed on November 28, 2018 by Lindsay and Associates of Towson, Maryland. The audit showed the town to be in strong financial condition with total net assets over liabilities in all departments of $15,621,447. This increase in net assets was due in part to a major increase in capital grants utilized during the fiscal year, primarily for upgrades at Chestertown Marina. In fact, capital grants overall increased from $1,089,532 in 2017 to $2,981,663 in 2018. That's a pretty big jump. Simultaneously, however, there was a decrease in revenues coming from the combination of property taxes, income taxes, and state share revenues of $78,975 that attest to the delayed recovery of the local tax base from the Great Recession of 2008. For that reason, the town took the difficult step of raising taxes for the first time since 1991. Property tax rates were raised from 37 cents to 42 cents per $100 of assessed value, with hopes that the increase, along with improving property values, will provide the municipality with ample revenues to cover expenses for a meaningful period of time. Meanwhile, the mayor and council continue to implore and urge the county to consider two major requests by the town. One, to provide a meaningful tax differential or tax rebate to the town for the services that we provide the taxpayer that the county would otherwise be providing. Those services would be things like police protection, road maintenance, snow plowing, planning services, and the administration of these services. Our taxpayers currently pay taxes twice for these services. And number two, to apply the hotel tax to Airbnbs and other forms of room rentals that avoid this tax and adversely impacts the tax-paying hotels and B&Bs that already exist in the community. The town continued to retain the homestead property tax credit percentage of 5%, which limits the increase in a homeowner's property tax bill to 5% in any given year, no matter how much their assessment has increased. Staffing. The town has 38 full-time employees and 4 part-time positions. They do an amazing job of providing services to all 5,000 plus taxpayers living on 25 miles of roads and streets. 3 of our part-time employees work at the visitor center, where we greet thousands of tourists coming to see Chestertown each year. I can tell you guys are riveted so far. I'm going to keep it going. Chestertown Marina project. Here's a before slide. The redevelopment of Chestertown Marina was a top priority for the town this year, with the ambitious project was all but completed in 2018. The marina was purchased in 2012 in order to A, preserve public access to the waterfront, B, promote heritage and ecotourism in the historic district, and C, to preserve an important component of the town's history, identity, and culture. So while I was not mayor at the time of this acquisition, I inherited a project that I truly believe is connected to the future health and welfare of its community. Chestertown's eligibility for state and federal grants was critical to the success of this initiative. Agencies that supported improvements at the site included USDA, Maryland DNR's Waterway Improvement Fund, the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, and the Maryland Heritage Area Authority. Numerous individuals have also made incredibly generous donations to this project, and we'll have more on that later in this meeting. With the above as a backdrop, the town pressed into 2018 with a Herculean effort to reach the finish line by making the following improvements at the marina this past year. 1, dredging in front of the old bulkheads along the river. 2, demolition of the old marina office. 3, demolition of all 3 old marina docks. 4, new bulkheads and decking along the river. 5, completion of the new building to serve as the headquarters for marina operations, which includes office space, bathrooms and showers, laundry services, and rentable space. 6, installation of underground storm drainage, electrical, water, sewer, and fuel lines. 7, installation of 2 new floating docks with large T-heads. 8, a 70-foot extension of the Cannon Street Pier with a fixed T-head and downriver slips. 9, raising the grade of the entire site by up to 2 feet and paving all parking areas. 10, new curbing, concrete sidewalks, and brick plazas. And 11, attractive street lighting, landscape, and lawn areas. Incredibly, by year end, the lion's share of this work was completed. Remaining items on the punch list for 2019 include the removal of the large metal storage building, the final top coating of asphalt on all the parking areas, the installation of landscaping at the entrance to the site, an extension of the existing boat ramp, and the construction of 2 fixed figure piers in the boat ramp basin. Adding to the appeal, actually, let's take a look at some pictures. So here's some of the before shots. This is what the marina looked like when I came into office in 2014. And I didn't want to beat a dead horse here, but suffice it to say, it needed a lot of TLC. So this year, the year began with us basically tearing everything apart. This is the old marina store going down in February. This is the old transient dock being ripped out later in March. This is the old fuel dock. You can see the state of the pilings that we pulled out was, it was time, I'll just put it that way. This is the dock at Scotts Point. And then fast forward to October, actually here's the bulkhead or lack thereof in front of the fish whistle with the new pilings put in place. And then in a few short months, this is what the marina looked like by late October of this past year. You can see all the new docks, the new walkways, the bulkheading, the parking lot. This is a really neat shot because I think it shows really well the relationship of this facility to downtown. It's right there. So hopefully when we get boating clubs coming back, which we're already getting calls about, they will not only stay here, they will walk the 2 blocks into town and patronize our businesses. This is a really cool shot because it shows the relationship to the rest of the river. And then here are some sort of detail shots of the parking area. Managing 4 different contractors at once while working around a very busy restaurant and dealing with the wettest year in the history of the state of Maryland was all inspired to make this quite the project, but we're very, very close to being done. So this is the site actually in use during downrigging weekend. So going on concurrently with our efforts, and I'll go back to my report here, adding to the appeal of this project are the efforts of Washington College on their waterfront just downriver, where they completed the impressive new Hodson Boathouse. They had a groundbreaking on this in the spring. And they've broken ground on the new Siemens Griswold Environmental Center next door. These waterfront sites will all be connected eventually with a walkway that already begins at High Street and will eventually stretch south along the Chester River to just past the Armory building. The Eastern Shore Land Conservancy has graciously volunteered to coordinate a study of the trail locations, types of surfaces that could be used on the walkways, and opportunities for fundraising, and they've done this as a goodwill offer. So this is what this facility looked like as of yesterday. You guys remember what it was like yesterday? It was like 12 degrees and blowing about 40 miles an hour. That was a cold day to be taking pictures. And this is what the Siemens Griswold Center looks like as of yesterday. Looks like they've basically completed the pad. And if you've seen the conceptual drawings of this, it's really going to be a cool thing. All right, moving right along. Chestertown Valve Business Campus. Again, this is what it looked like yesterday. This is one of the most exciting economic development projects that we've had going on here in many, many years. Meanwhile, across town, some other amazing developments were occurring at the Chestertown Business Campus. The extension of Hack Drive into the campus has been completed all the way to Warner Drive, where Dixon Valve's 148,000 square foot warehouse is being completed, and plans for the 70,507 square foot corporate headquarters building were approved for an early January 2019 construction groundbreaking. This warehouse will be equipped with state-of-the-art technology for shipping and storing of Dixon's many products. Lamont and Shore Distributors. Other industries added to the spirit of prosperity last year, with Lamont Chemical adding 8,700 square feet of industrial space connected with their newest innovative process. And Shore Distributors. It's really hard to make these buildings look sexy, but I did the best of it. I lost my place.
Pretty good.
And Shore Distributors, blah, blah, blah. Shore Distributors added 4,300 square feet on College Avenue. Both of these exemplary businesses have been in Chestertown for over 50 years. Moving right along, another sexy building. On the commercial side, the town took joy in the opening of the Chesapeake Movies on October 12th in the vacant theater at Washington Square. The reopening was a group venture with the Chesapeake Movie Group, the Kent County Commissioners, the owners of Washington Square, and the town. The county advanced the theater group a gap loan of $75,000 toward their reopening, and the town pledged the anticipated admission and amusement tax back to repay that loan. Financials indicated that this loan, if all goes well, could be paid back to the county within 5 to 6 years. Other accomplishments in 2018. The Louisa D.A. Carpenter Park. The town received funding for a DNR, Community Parks and Playgrounds grant of $138,400 to include a walking trail, renovation of the basketball park and pavilion at the Louisa D.A. Carpenter Park. Are you paying attention?
Yes, sir.
He's over here
I know,
going
get
crazy.
ready. It is anticipated that these improvements
Yes,
will
sir.
be implemented in spring of 2019.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, in my office, I just saw a call for proposals to build this out, which is really exciting. In Margot Bailey Park, new playground equipment at Bailey Park was recently installed by the Chestertown Recreation Commission in September of 2018. Rail Trail, Phase 4 of the rail trail has been fully approved by the Maryland Rail Administration
Me too.
for construction, and the state completed their major stormwater project under the rail easement that crosses the Lamont Valley. That's pretty ambitious calling that a valley, but it was a big stormwater project. Grant funds have been received from Bikeways for the construction of this segment, but their funding now requires a 50% match of local funds, making it a budgeting issue for the town that I'm sure we'll be taking up this spring. This final leg, if constructed, will go from Maryland 291 into Foxley Manor. Sale of surplus property. The remaining vacant lots on Lynchburg Street and Hawkins Lane were sold in February to one of the neighborhood churches that hold services in the community. Their interest is to expand in the future and stay in Chestertown rather than moving to a more rural location. One lot remains of the original old Garnett School lands. Its frontage on College Avenue makes it most suitable for infill, single-family housing for deserving low and moderate income families. This type of project is being pursued at present with a local household. The property owned by the town at the intersection of Maryland Route 20 and Maryland Route 514 was declared surplus by ordinance. It will be appraised and offered to the neighbors who are somewhat landlocked by this parcel. The BUILD grant. This year the town submitted a major grant application to the BUILD grant program, and that is an acronym that stands for Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. This is an infrastructure improvement initiative administered by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Town staff worked with staff members from Dixon Val and Chesapeake Charities to submit a $4.5 million request for funds that would be used to repave 13 miles of streets in town, improve signage, make crosswalks ADA compliant, improve safety for pedestrians, and improve stormwater collection on the first 3 blocks of High Street. Unfortunately, this grant was not funded after the national competition. However, we do plan to resubmit it in 2019. Special events in the Chestertown Visitor Center. This was a big year for special events in Chestertown. On many weekends, our streets were alive with festivities, starting with Chester Draw, then on to the Tea Party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. The National Music Festival in June was followed by 4th of July fireworks, Legacy Day in August, the Jazz Festival in September, the first ever block party on Cross Street hosted by DCA in Main Street, the HP Festival in October, Downrigging Weekend, Cars on High running from April through October, an incredible Dickens weekend and a beautiful holiday season featuring the Hebe Fountain transformed into a Christmas tree by Zane Carter, Ed Minch, It's John Hanley and Rob Glebe. Let's take a look, shall we? So, just so happens I was at Tea Party with my camera. This is John Andrew McCown and his brother Parker, sons of Andrew McCown, who headed this reenactment for decades, and his sons are kind of carrying the mantle. Here's some reenactors firing muskets. Look at that action shot. That's a pretty good shot. If I must say so myself. If you just were to Photoshop the power lines out, you really have something there. Here's the Clydesdales. Thank you, Linda, and the committee for bringing them. That was really, really cool. And I just took this picture. This is by far the biggest event that we have in terms of just sheer volume of people that the event brings into town. So when I hear people bashing the Tea Party every once in a while, it's ridiculous. We need to have weekends like this to bring people in. If they don't patronize your store that weekend, it's still the town putting its best foot forward, and they're going to eventually come back. This is the first day I ever stepped foot in Chestertown was for the Tea Party Festival of 1992. And look what it's done to me. So, here's the raft race the following day. So that's Tea Party. Legacy Day, this is a really neat, I didn't have pictures for every event, but Legacy has really become a really neat event that Historical Society puts on. Last few years they've kind of celebrated various aspects of the town's African American heritage. So it's a really neat event. It's a really diverse event, which is kind of one of the coolest things about it. And they have really good bands in the evening.
Yes.
And really a fun event. This is Downrigging Weekend. We had, this is when the marina kind of was debuted. We had one awesome day, one kind of rainy day that's still pretty good. But anyway, I was just glad that the marina was ready because we were pouring concrete the day before the ships got there. So it was right down to the wire. But you could see the crowds when the sun was out on that beautiful new fuel dock there. And that was really exciting. Dickens Weekend, of course, this is one of our big growing events, largely done by Main Street. And just some of the wrinkles they added this year were really, really cool. That's like a great little postcard shot for the town. This is a tent that was new this year. What did you guys call this tent?
London Road.
London Road, yeah. This tent was packed all day long. Just a really, really neat event. Gives people an excuse to dress up in costumes, kind of like Harry Potter does. HP, I should say. And then this is the Run Like the Dickens foot race. I think that's all the pics I have. All right, let's go back to this awesome report. Visitor Center. Throughout the year, the Visitor Center stayed open for 360 days, greeting 11,311 visitors. The busiest 3 months were June with 1,744 visitors, May with 1,423 visitors, and October with 1,149 visitors. Our website had 45,720 unique visitors with a session duration of 1 minute 47 minutes and 2.18 pages on average. So I know a lot of you were looking for that information. Farmers and Artisans Market. The death of Owen McCoy, the farmers market manager for many, many years, in July was a sad occurrence for the market and the community in general. Owen had been at the helm for decades and was very popular at this weekly event. Owen could never be replicated, but we were fortunate to have his daughters Kaylee and Danya Benton step in to take over management until December 31st of last year. During the fall of the year, the town and all of the vendors, and I do mean all of the vendors, worked on promulgating new farmers market rules and regulations. After several rounds of discussion, general agreement was finally reached on updated guidelines, which will go into effect in February 2019. So here's a shot of the farmers market. And we really do have one of the best farmers markets around. It's just such a vibrant place. And then I had the first picture of this report was like people walking up High Street. Those people had just spilled over from the market and were like walking around. So the market not only brings business to these guys, it really helps businesses for the stores around the park. Okay, long-range status of the hospital. The status and existence of our local hospital is a continued concern to the council. Kevin Cazell, representing the University of Maryland Shore Medical Center at Chestertown, talked with the council late in the year and reported that Compass Regional Hospice opened a 4-bed residential center on the 3rd floor of the hospital, and that the facility is currently staffed to 15 patient beds. He stated that the hospital technically has 26 beds in total, and the staff expands to service these beds in emergency situations. In another front, the Save the Hospital group still regularly meets and expresses their concerns about the disappearing functions at the hospital center. Curb appeal, garden club, and DCA activities. Just one sentence. This was another banner year for curb appeal, PCA, and garden club. All right, so that brings me to goals for this year, 2019. Here are some bulleted goals. Keep taxes at the same rate if possible while maintaining our chartered service responsibilities. Work with the Kent County Commissioners to discuss the possibility of reinstating a representative tax rebate or tax differential for the taxpayers of Chestertown. Work with the county to generate hotel tax revenues from Airbnbs and other forms of room rentals that currently elude this tax. Complete the remaining improvements at Chestertown Marina and develop a management structure to run the facility in a professional manner while maximizing revenues. Continue our work with businesses, business associations, industries, and institutions to improve the local economy and keep our storefronts filled. Support all events, festivals, and celebrations that bring our town to life. Protect the town's drinking wells at all costs. Repave or repair streets as part of a comprehensive long-term plan. Complete Phase 4 of the rail trail to Foxley Manor. Work with Chestertown's Main Street program to add directional signage throughout the community. Right, Kay?
You got it.
We've been working on,
Happening.
that's been on this list for years. Hopefully we have some funding now, so that might actually happen. Work with Washington College to design, engineer, and identify funding sources for the planned waterfront walk along the Chester River on college-owned lands between Wilmer Park and the mouth of Radcliffe Creek. Continue to improve our recreation programs, expand recreational activities for all ages in Chestertown, and involve the input of our youth in the decision-making process. And lastly, work with the medical community, Eastern Shore Delegation, Kent County Commissioners, and local residents to advocate for the retention of services at our local hospital. And that concludes the State of the Town report for 2018.
All right.
Pictures were nice.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
Bad try. Little dry.
140,000, 138,000. I'll get you the exact number. It's a little bit less than we usually get. And like I said, they cheesed up and make it a magic grant. It used to be 100% grant money. It made it a lot easier.
All right, moving right along to the regular mayor and council meeting. The first item on the agenda for the regular meeting is to approve the minutes of the mayor and council meeting of January 7th, 2019.
I would move that we approve the mayor and council meeting for January the 7th, 2019 as submitted.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Let the record show we unanimously approve the minutes of January 7th, 2019. Operating funds on hand this evening for the town of Chestertown are $1,327,249.67. You will also notice our restricted use funds for the marina project have been spent down, and that is basically, I will elaborate on this more later, but we got some pretty significant donations from private individuals that have allowed us to completely pay down, basically all the way down the line of credit that we had used while we were in the middle of demolishing and then rebuilding our entire marina. So that is really, really good news, but that's why that balance is zero, because if we had the money, we wanted to pay it down so we wouldn't have to pay the interest. The next item on the agenda is the payment of the bills.
Move that we pay the bills as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show we unanimously agree to pay the bills, which brings us to Caroline Grotsky and the Good Seeds Project. And I think you brought a posse with you?
I brought a posse with me, so I'm there. This is terrific to be here tonight. Most of you know me, especially with the Downtown Association and Curb Appeal. Tonight I'm coming in a different venue with the Garden Club. But Curb Appeal really has a little place in this because about a year and a half ago, parents from Garnett School asked if Curb Appeal could help a little bit and liven up Garnett School with some flowers and a little bit of landscaping. Well, I was able to do a little bit of that with volunteers, me and parents from Garnett School, and the help of you really giving us soil and mulch to make the project happen. But the parents, we got together and we said, no, we can do better than this. And so I went to the Garden Club because I know that the Chestertown Garden Club is always looking for good educational projects here in town. And so I formed a committee with parents from Garnett School and members from our Garden Club. And so I have them here tonight. We have Darren Tillman. She's a mother and works as a consultant for nonprofits. We have Krista Lammerman here, and she also is co-owner of Alchemy. She also is an herbal clinician, and homeopathic medicine is her gig, so to speak. And we have Connie Schrock, who you know, as the academic director of Horizons. Also on our committee, we have Barbara Macbeth on the Susan Fund, and we have Diane Coulter, who is not here this evening, and Karen O'Connor. And all of these have vested interest in the education at Garnett School. So we formed a committee, and I went to the Susan Fund of the Chestertown Garden Club. Shirley, Susan left a trust, and it was to be used for educational purposes. We have been using monies from that fund in educational ways, but we thought that this project might be something that the Garden Club would really like to get involved in. And so we went to the board, they approved it, and we put up the seed money for this project that's going to happen at Garnett School. So I'm going to step back a little bit here and now let Darren show you what we've come up with and how we've gotten volunteers already to draw up some wonderful landscaping plans. And this project, what I'm so excited about as being an educator myself, that we're going to collaborate not only the landscaping design, but the educational curriculum, environmental literacy curriculum that's happening now in the schools. We're going to coordinate those two so that the children can really be involved in this project.
When you say you went to the board, do you mean the school board?
Yes, we went to the school board. We were approved by the school board, and this evening, they are very excited about
You just got
the
approved
project.
this evening?
Not this evening.
Oh,
This evening, we went to, last Monday night, and this evening we went to the county commissioners, and Darren or Krista will tell you we have some great news of what they're helping us with. And of course, Bill, you have already told us that we're going to be able to use the brick from the waterfront at the front of Garnett School and the compass rose. So that would be wonderful. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to make this half as interesting as Mayor Serena. So we've named this project the Garnett Good Seeds Garden. Henry Highland Garnett, as you know, was a brilliant orator and abolitionist, and we found a quotation of his, which is, "In every man's mind, the good seeds of liberty are planted." So we want to honor him and the legacy of this school, and also to sort of nod to what we're planting here. We want lots of good things to grow from this project. So this is the school as you know it today. This is the before.
The before shot.
Portion, right? So it's barren, and we learned when we moved to this community about a year and a half ago that the schools don't have a great reputation. If you were told as a parent that you probably don't want to send your kids to this public school and you drove by, that bias would be reinforced. They don't look welcoming. We wanted to learn more, and once we walked inside the doors of Garnett, we immediately felt that it was a vibrant and nurturing community there. So we want to help telegraph that right now. You can't see that driving by or walking by. So this is the plan, and I'm going to let Krista, who's more of an expert in plants, kind of walk you through the design here. It was donated by Southwork Studio, so that was a coup in itself that we have Kristen to thank for.
Yeah, that was a wonderful Miles Bernard of Southfork Studio, who has some incredible expertise, who's very, as you probably know, native plantings are his specialty. So this is an entirely native planted, or will be native planted garden. It has native trees like persimmons, oaks, sweetback magnolias, native shrubs, chokeberry, aka aronia, blueberries. There are native grasses. There will be some native, well, some of the culinary herbs might not be entirely native, but they grow like native, or weed, if you will. There will also be some medicinal herbs and plants that can be, that are in there. So it's a bird habitat, it's a pollinator habitat, it's a kid habitat, because it's also got some lovely walkways through it. There are some pathways and some boulders in the plan that the kids can, and some tree stump seating. There are also, as we talked about, I'm just doing the plants, so I'm not going to talk about that. So there is depth and delight in the plan, and I'm not sure, yeah, so, and different parts. And then the Shore Rivers, which she'll get to, is also, that's not my plan.
Yeah,
those aren't plants. So Shore Rivers has volunteered to do a rain garden around the backside, which I'm sure you're all familiar with how full of water that gets. So that's not part of what Miles drew up, but that is coming as well. I'm trying to think if I left anything off.
What's the width, like, so between the sidewalk and the side of the school, it's like 20 feet?
In some places, it's even deeper.
Yeah, over here it gets
Oh, yeah, okay.
deeper.
Like closer to 40.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Really?
remember.
Okay.
And and yeah, I don't know if you can read this design, but you've got the top maps onto that entire Calvert Street block. And then at bottom, that's just, it's cut in half so that it can be enlarged.
Yeah, this is the corner of the library.
Okay.
Walking down, this is the entrance. It picks up again here
Got
and
it.
comes down to the corner by the college.
And right now, there are some huge bushes there.
Texas. And those attractive fellows.
And
right up against the building.
Against the building.
Got it.
The county has agreed to have those pulled for us. And the county has also agreed this evening to put in 4 receptacles for trash
And recycling.
and recycling. So that's going to be
Yes, so
wonderful.
thanks to Bill Ingersoll for the tip on which receptacles will look like the town's. So our goals for this project are placemaking, and that means that we're fostering a pride of place and a sense of care for our town's school and its neighborhood, and we really wanted a visual connection to Chestertown. This is downtown Chestertown. It's blocks from the heart of downtown, but people don't think of it as downtown. So the trash receptacles will be part of that visual connection, and the piece that the town is doing, which is this brick entranceway here with the compass rose, that's a direct nod to the maritime heritage of our town, that's going to make it feel like you're walking the streets of Chestertown instead of you've left and you're in this sort of no man's land. And then education, as we said, there are actually sort of mini classrooms in this space with seats, and it makes a direct connection to this new environmental literacy curriculum that's being rolled out this year, both with the STEM and environmental ed, and then there's history and art potentially. We have mural spaces noted on the plan here, and we've already got some interest in funding and installation for those. And then it is curb appeal. It started once upon a time with this curb appeal project, but we've just kind of written it much more largely here. This is a project that we hope will help bring more young families and their enthusiasm to our town, and that will help let others in the town know that good things are happening inside the walls.
and eventually help all of downtown.
And then the team, you've already heard, it's the Chestertown Garden Club, some of their core members, and also some parents. And we also have a 4th grade teacher on the team, and she has been in conversation with Jemima Clark, who's the STEM curriculum coordinator. And the Garden Club's great contribution to this project is the long-term maintenance.
Wow.
So we don't want this going in and then looking overgrown or looking untidy. Connie is going to muster the army of volunteers that will
Because these are largely natural, native things. Once they flourish there, the maintenance will go down a great deal, because if they're happy there, there's not going to be a whole lot to do but just check them and make sure they have enough water and things like that.
The main thing is initially, when the trees
First
are put
year and a half
in,
or so.
is to make sure that they're watered properly.
And that, all of that low maintenance, curb appeal and beauty are integral to the plan there. And then you heard a little bit about the seeds already. The Shirley Susan Fund gave $5,000 in seed money, which we've been using as proof as we submit some grant proposals that we have this match in hand. Local designer and celebrity Robbie Bear designed our beautiful logo, which you'll get to see again. You, the good people of the town and council, have pledged to help with that frontispiece. That's really going to be the keystone, that brick entranceway and a compass rose. And then, as Krista mentioned, Shore Rivers has also partnered on rain gardens to engage our young environmental stewards.
And I will also say that Bob Ramsey has already done some donating. Miles gave us one board like this, but we've gotten 2 more that Bob Ramsey has donated, so that we can go out and talk about the Good Seeds project. And we have various boards so that we can all be doing this.
Will they be in the library? Is that going to be a board in the library?
No, they are not going to be able to permanently display one, but there will be one up at the school. And we have several more if there are other places we can find to display them. So this evening, we really just wanted to help make you all conversant so that you can talk about this project. It's going to need volunteers, it's going to need donors, it's going to need participation from the community. We want people to be excited to come see it. And we wanted to let you know and to invite you. We're having a sort of community launch event at the library's Little Yellow Building on January the 30th. That's a week from Wednesday, from 5:30 to 6:30. And we'll send you that invitation properly, but we wanted to let you know that we would welcome you. And we hope to break ground and have a major first phase installed on or around Earth Day, which is April 22nd this year.
So spread the word. We're looking for donations. And it's going to be a great project.
I think if you don't mind, I might explain to the town what I volunteered the town for.
Please do.
We had tens of thousands of bricks at the marina that we could take up or just bulldoze, and we sent crew after crew down there and put it on pallets and took it back to the yard, hoping that someday we would have something like this. And when you all asked for bricks and for some help on that, I said, we had the perfect thing, something that was saved, something that was recycled. They're all in perfect shape. And at the end, there were so many that the bulldozers were going over top of the ones that remained, even though we had offered them to anyone who could get there and take them. So I'm really pleased to see those bricks get recycled. I know Tom Sappington, with all his skills, is going to get excited about this. And I hope it's okay with the council that I told them in advance that they could expect us to do that, because I think it's a small thing for the community. It's very close to our own street right away. So
we're working with the Extension Service here in the county, and the plants that are going to go in and the trees that are going to go in are going to all be pollinators. They will have birds and all of that kind of thing. And in addition, the trees on the right-hand side will contribute to lowering the cost of cooling the school, because that's a hot side of the building, and we're going to have some shade trees there. It's all good.
I know you're making Ruth Menifee very happy tonight. Yes. Because the tree committee has often talked about this, and the property issue of it being school board or maybe county commissioners and not ours always came. I mean, the best planting areas are really not on town right-of-way property. They're inside of it on private. I mean, publicly owned, but not our property. So this is really, really great. And thank you.
Neighbors, we've already spoken to many of the neighbors. Very excited. We've gotten volunteers from the neighborhood that are willing to help Connie's committee. So we're really excited about it. So spread the word.
Yeah, this is great. Just awesome project all the way around. I'm really excited.
Thank you. And you can leave one of those in our lobby and we'll display it if you want to on an easel.
That would be
Yeah, when you-
wonderful. That'd be wonderful. And we'll get a little.
Yeah, a little thing on it
information
says
to go with
send checks to.
Exactly.
And Darren, I understand you're coming back in a few weeks to again talk with us about something about the environment?
Yes. And Krista as well.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the police report. A lot of reporting out here tonight.
Yeah.
Did I get this?
Yeah, you can borrow it.
For your next crab feast.
You can, there you go. There you go.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a December report, and then also we'll do an overview on the annual report. Is that good, Chief? Can you hear me? Okay. So December. Our statistics are that we had 251 hours in administration. That was 15%. We had 60 hours of criminal investigation, 4%. 7 hours in accident investigation, which was 1%. We did 738 hours of vehicle patrol, 44%. We had 185 hours of foot patrol, which was 11%. Training was 115 at 7%, 47 hours at 1%. Overtime, 261 at 15%. And I gave you an overtime chart just this evening, and very obviously the majority is shift coverage. We'll talk about it in the annual part. 2 officers down, and 1 officer that was out on for illness for a little bit, and we had vacation. So it was just a lot of holes that we had to fill. Our red speed camera was 315. That's actually getting kind of up to the higher numbers that we have seen in the past. I guess holiday travel probably. Our ward breakdown, calls for service, we had 3%, about 3.5% in Ward 1, 20.5 in Ward 2, 21 in Ward 3, 37 in Ward 4, and our outside jurisdiction was 5, and our at-large was 1. Our busiest day for calls for service was Saturday. And our busiest time was 7 to 8 in the evening. Like I said,
I have a question on calls for
I'm sorry, yes,
service.
sir.
On your page 10 and 11 and 12, you have a number of calls for service, which is canine training. I'm just wondering, how does canine training convert to a call for service?
Yeah, we were just working with another agency, and I was trying to account for the time, so maybe it could be a better location.
Well, it probably belongs in training and not in a call for service.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay? So anyway, we had 3 officers leave the agency this year. We had 1 who retired in September, and then we had 2 officers who moved on to another agency. So of course that left us with a necessity to hire. We hired an officer in October, and we introduced her to the council, and she has completed her field training and is now a productive member of the force. However, I would add, as the chief knows, it takes, in my opinion, probably about 3 years before an officer is really well-rounded, but she's doing great, so she'll only continue to get better and mature. You may recall the last meeting I mentioned to you that I was trying to get 2 candidates into the academy, challenged by nothing less than it was the week of Christmas. And unfortunately, those 2 that I made conditional offers to did not successfully complete the process. And then we were down to days, but we really scrambled, and I'm proud of our staff for coming back and actually hiring 2 people who started the academy, I think it was January 30th, whatever that, I'm sorry, January 3rd, I think it was a Friday, somewhere in there. And they're now about 3 weeks into the academy, doing fantastic. And We anticipate their graduation, which will be in June, and then we'll have to do field training for about a month, and then we'll have them on the road as additional officers, and then that will bring us to full staff, which is 14. Okay? And if you will, I'll just go over the annual report.
Are those candidates local?
Absolutely, yes, sir. They're both Chestertown addresses. They don't live in town proper, but yes, sir.
Yeah.
They're both young. I think one's 26, one's 24, or something like that.
It helps a lot if they're local, though.
Well, you've told me that, and I found it in my own experience that, first of all, if they're local, and second, no matter who, if we send them through the academy, we tend to have better retention. I just think they sort of buy in more, and so we're hopeful that they'll be with us for a good while. I have no doubt that they'll be good officers. Okay? So our calls for service in the year 2000, and I guess I might add on the front cover, that's our K-9 Henzo, who served with us for 7 years. He had a year of retirement and then he passed away this year, so we put him on the cover. So in 2018, we had 4,168 calls for service. You may remember a few times I've told you about patrol checks and calls for service and a differentiation. One time they were both counted the same, so that little bit bigger number in 2014 is the end of that change over right before. So that shows why that's a little different. You see the calls for service broken down by ward, and gosh, Ward 4 are really very similar. Patrol checks, 2, 3, and 4 again are very similar. We had 195 adult arrests. That's about 27 more than last year, but that's not anything alarming. Just some anomaly that we had more. We had 14 juvenile arrests with 24 separate charges, and assault was the most common. I'm sorry, I skipped back to the adult arrests. The most common charges were assault, CDS, assaults, and theft in that order. We had 22 civil citations, and the biggest or most current or frequent civil citation was open container. We did 12 DWI or DUI arrests. We did 18 CDS arrests, and again, our timeline kind of shows you a trend, and that is in 2014 we had a good bit more, but that was at the end of where marijuana was being charged, and now we do it on a civil citation, so it wouldn't fit that criterion anymore. Our traffic citations were 397. Our warnings were 2,556. We had 103 Part 1 crimes, and let's see, we solved or we cleared 58 by arrest. So like 52 or 3%. That's very compared to nationally, compared to police agencies. That's outstanding, actually. We had 223 Part 2 crimes, and we made 181 arrests. That percentage is about 80%. And again, that's just really right on, spot on for a police department. Our K-9 numbers are there with the different drugs and how much were confiscated, and we have our photo enforcement program, as we call it, the red speed thing. Our average for the year monthly violations were 236, and you can see that the month of October was very low at 125 compared to everything else is like in the 200s to 300s, and if you recall, that month and also the month of February, we had some mechanical adjustments, so the thing was in operation the entire time. And lastly, a big part of our assault on drugs is our participation in the Kent County Narcotics Task Force. That's comprised of officers from the Sheriff's Department, Maryland State Police, and the Chestertown Police. And there are some numbers that they produced this year. So looking forward to what's going to go on this year, what we hope. Again, we're very hopeful that or not hopeful, we're looking forward to our two candidates coming out of the academy to supplement our force that will definitely knock down that overtime number for us. We are also going to continue to, another thing we did, we actually got new furniture in our officers' room this year. We are members of a federal government property opportunity where we monitor stuff, and we can actually kind of even put in a request and see what we can come up with. And there was an Army recruiting station in Towson that was renovating, and so they have desks and almost like pods, I guess you would say. And they were very serviceable for us, so our desks were like 25 or 30 years old, literally. I bet you have, probably. And so they were held together with screws and whatever. So anyway, they're not new, but they're very nice and very serviceable with an occasional Go Army sticker on there. But we're very happy to get that equipment. And you know, we continue, I want to continue to be proactive. One thing I hope we have available when we start talking about budget in a few months is some funds to get that camera budget back up, because I really think it is the wave of the future, and we need to get more cameras spread out throughout the community, and hopefully we can address that. Okay? And Mayor, I think your report was outstanding. I'm going to tell you the truth, I was kind of dreading it a little bit, but you spiced it up nicely.
Wait till next year.
All right, I can hardly.
I don't even know what wrinkles we're gonna throw in there, but it's gonna be something spectacular.
Thank you.
Bob Sipes interpretive dance or something.
Yes.
That would be great.
Something along those
That would
lines.
be awesome.
Well, I think you better think that through a little bit.
It's gonna happen.
I've seen that before.
You're up, Bill.
Oh, it's me?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I'm going to keep this short too, because I know there's more meeting left. The Public Service Commission case number 9499, which is Morgan Solar, we filed our intervention right on time, but the case has been postponed, which is favorable to us, by a failure of the applicant to meet all the state DNR requirements at the least. I don't know if there were any other things that the judge postponed the case. So like Marty said, that's like the can down the road, but in a way, it gives more time for the Western Shore case of appeal to get further down the road too, which is the one that I'm really concerned about, is local jurisdictions being able to have their own zoning and enforce their own zoning and create their own zones and live with that. The second thing I have is an annual event, the Chestertown, which was the lead-off thing in the mayor's speech of the celebrations that we have, and their permit request is for the whole parade as part of Chestertown celebration on Saturday, March 2nd, 2019, at 11:30 a.m. I think that's a little earlier. They used to wait for the farmer's market to end. The parade route will be as follows: begin at Dixon Drive, proceed down High Street to Lawyers Road, turn and disband at the corner of Lawyers Row and High Street, so they don't disturb the farmer's market at all. They would have a 40 by 60 foot tent with bump outs erected on Spring Avenue between High Street and Park Row. It is anticipated that the tent will end before the post office. The tent will be put up by Eastern Shore Tents and Events on Saturday, March 2nd, 2019 at 8 a.m. and be removed at 4:30 p.m. This is a really nice event, food contest, and compliment the People's Bank for keeping the initiative going. It's good charity too, so.
No rain. No rain.
Yeah, don't bust.
Guaranteed no rain this year, it says on the thing. They ask you to waive the open container rule and use the town stage. Use the parking lot located in front of Nearly New for the cornhole games this year. Assistance from the police department for the necessary street closures for tent and parade. And that's about it.
Do we need a motion to
Yes.
pass this?
I'll make a motion to approve the permit for Chestertown on March 2nd, 2019.
I second that.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Let the record show we unanimously approve the permit for Chestertown, March 2nd.
Since that went so well, the Earth Day request for this year is to hold the 9th Annual Earth Day Festival on Saturday, April 20th, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Stage barricades to be delivered at either end of Memorial Row on Friday. Set up a stage on the sidewalk on Memorial Row at the foot of the courthouse sidewalk. Trash cans and recycle buckets to be placed on Memorial Plaza to help with the take the information booth to the north end of the plaza, and police to place no parking signs along the sides of Memorial Row. So that's okay. I'm sure they have planning to do. I'd like to hear what the council wants to do with the 9th Annual Earth Day Festival.
What happens if they have a funeral?
They're going to actually call the church. I talked to John about that, and he said he was going to call Emmanuel Church and ask them not to schedule anything for that day.
Okay.
So,
We're asking people not to die.
yes, please don't die.
It's reasonable. It's reasonable.
Yeah, I think
Reasonable
so.
request.
Hold on.
Then I make a motion to approve the permit for Earth Day on April 20th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show we unanimously approve the permit for Earth Day, April 20th, 2019.
That concludes my report.
Okay, so I have a couple kind of big items here. The first thing I'm going to discuss is the hospital oil spill remediation plan. We had a meeting, and when I say we, I mean it was, I was there, David was there, representing Ward 1, Bill Ingersoll and Bob Sipes were there, representing really the town employees that have dealt with this situation the longest. When did this spill originate? The late 80s?
Late 80s.
So in the late, for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, in the late 80s, the hospital, back prior to it even being owned by, UMS and Shore Regional Health, were noticing that they kept heating their building up, and whenever they went to check the tank was almost empty, whether their heat was really high or really low, and they just kept filling it. Finally, it occurred to somebody that maybe there's a leak in the tank, and it turns out there had been a leak in the tank for a really, really, really long time. Nobody knows exactly how much heating oil escaped from this particular tank, but it's in the tens of thousands of gallons. So the reason this was such a concern for the town is because if you look at a Google Earth map and look where the hospital is and where the spill site is, and then look at where the majority of the town's drinking water supply comes from, the spill is uphill from the town's wells and less than a mile away. I think it's like half a mile away as the crow flies. So immediately once this was discovered, MDE got involved. The hospital set up a series of pumps all around their campus that basically the idea of these pumps was that they were going to not only pump out the free product that was in the ground, but it was actually going to artificially reverse the flow of the groundwater. Instead of having it head downhill, it would head towards a central spot in the middle of where these pumps were located. This is not my field of expertise. This is all stuff I've learned from scratch in the last 5 years. I didn't even know there was a spill when I ran for mayor. And if I had, I might not have run for mayor, to be honest. That's an exaggeration, but suffice it to say, this has been going on now for basically about 30 years. About 3 or 4 years ago, the hospital came to the town and basically said, look, we've been pumping this oil out of the ground now for almost 3 decades, and we're getting to a point where we're still getting oil out of the ground, but it's in the tiniest trace amounts. And we're at a point where we need to change tactics because we're spending thousands of dollars to basically pump out oil that barely exists. So they proposed this other method called Ivysol, which is something called a surfactant. What a surfactant does is it basically gets into the soil and washes any oil that's bound to soil or clay particles and frees that product from the soil so that in theory the pumps can then take that product back out of the ground. So there was a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of back and forth. The town was worried that the product would allow whatever was left in the ground to maybe flow faster than the pumps could handle. We just didn't know because this was, I don't want to say it was experimental, but it hadn't been done so close to a water source as far as we could tell. So we negotiated basically an agreement with the hospital that created several insurance measures for the town. One was that the hospital put 4 sentinel wells along Campus Avenue. The purpose there was that if any oil had escaped to the pump system, in theory, it would have to pass through these 4 additional new wells that the hospital drilled at their expense. And that would tell us, hey, oil has gotten away from you, and now you need to take additional actions to suck it back towards the hospital. The other thing is we basically got them to put in writing that if, in a worst-case scenario, heating oil contaminated our wells, that the hospital would take responsibility financially for providing the town with new wells. So that was several years ago. They did the test, they used the surfactant, and then they continued pumping, and they've been pumping ever since and sending us the results. Bottom line is now we're at a point where the amounts of heating oil they're detecting are almost infinitesimally small. When they get a detect, it's usually around 1 or 2 parts per million, which you could probably put that in a glass of water and drink it and not have any adverse effects. Not that I would recommend you do that, but the point is that the amounts are really, really tiny. And even if 1 part per million were to escape the pump system, it probably would degrade well before it got to our wells. So with this in mind, the hospital initiated a meeting with the town, with representatives, and basically told us that what they would like to do and what they intend to do is approach MDE about closing out this cleanup. And what that would involve, what their proposal is going to be, is that MDE will hopefully, they are hoping will approve for them to turn off the pump. You guys got to help me if I get my facts right. And what would happen is once those pumps were turned off, they would not be removed from the ground. And for 2 years, the hospital continued to conduct tests to see if any product was being detected in the wells. And if any detections occurred at certain trigger levels, and again, I'm not that guy, but at a certain level that the scientists will determine at MDE, if that were to happen, the pumps would then be activated again. If no detection happens, then it's possible that MDE at that point may give the hospital permission to essentially shut the operation down. Luckily, we negotiated a separate agreement with the hospital, independent of MDE, that the hospital agreed that they would test for another year. So for the hospital to totally walk away from this, they would need to satisfy to the town for at least 3 years after the pumps are turned off that the oil levels are so low that it's basically deemed not to be a threat to the water supply. That's basically how the meeting went. I was really surprised at how well the meeting went. It was one of the first times that the hospital initiated a meeting like that to telegraph to us what they wanted to do before they actually went and did it. Like, they could have gone to MDE in theory without us, but they wanted to honor the agreement that we had negotiated several years ago and continue with that transparency. Bob Sipes was present, and for the first time ever, he wasn't super stressed about this proposal, which for me, like, that was a good sign because Bob knows more about this than I'll ever forget in my lifetime. So I said to these guys, I said, look, there's probably no scenario that the town would feel 100% confident with to shut this down because there's too much at stake for us. But, you know, at some point we have to honor the data, and what the data is showing is that the levels are really, really, really low.
They were up there working on a pump today, with Bright Leaf or whatever it is. Have they started already or what?
I don't think so. I think they're
hose and then had their truck sitting there.
Yeah. They're probably doing tests, which they've been doing for 30 years, basically. Can you guys add anything?
Just add a little bit. One of the reasons that there's as much concern as there is on this, despite the fact that the monitoring really does show very, very low levels there now, is that we honestly don't know how much was spilled in the first place. We know that 80,000 gallons was recovered. And the EPA guidance is that you're never going to be able to get it all out. And that in most cases, you're not really going to get more than 50% of the oil. So there's a lot that's kind of a mystery there. We don't know. Bacteria may have eaten that. It may have leached on out. All we know is that you never recover everything that is spilled. And it's for that reason that we have to be as careful as we possibly can with that monitoring and to continue that monitoring as long as we can.
Bill, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think the transparency, the confidence that you said that Bob Sipes felt was that this was being disclosed to us before the fact and not after the fact. We're going to be apprised of MDE's reaction to their request to turn off the pumps. And that gives us another set of times, really. Whether what is left under the ground moves or not is what we're removing the cone of influence. We're seeing if it starts to move across what I call the Maginot Line, which is Brown Street for us. The Sentinel wells are 1 block away on Campus Avenue, and that is really, that's where the red lights go off. But when it crosses Brown Street to me, which is, the land flattens out, and I'm not saying that that's what happens at the water table, but that's the important thing. So transparency and openness that we haven't had before, a renewal of our vows about our 3-year agreement. I mean, that was another important thing. We said, hey, look, we're still good with our agreement, right? Correct, everything seems the same. And they brought their attorney, which I should say, we brought ours. I said we would, because he's an environmental attorney. He's very good at what he does, and everybody was calm. And I think it was just the best meeting that we could have had without being, nobody's being fooled or tricked. Those tests are right there. We've been looking at them quarter after quarter after quarter. We know what each well does and which each well doesn't do. So the Sentinel wells have only had one of the most minute strikes almost a year ago. That could have been anything. That could have come from any other source. But anyway, I think the mayor's given a good report. I think all the right people were there, and that's all I have to say about that.
I will say that I told Cozell we had Aaron Brockovich on retainer, so he might have something to do with it.
It's interesting. I've learned more about oil spill and remediation than I ever hoped to know, but there are also natural processes eating away at this stuff that, I think, we got to take into account. But the unknown, as David said, is like literally nobody knows how much was or is in the ground. And it may be possible that there's still oil in the ground that will never get to our wells, that is just bound up so tightly in clays and getting eaten by bacteria that even if there is product that they can't detect, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get to our wells. At any rate,
if they had to do over again, they would have excavated that and dug all that dirt out.
Not possible. I mean, so much of it was probably underneath the hospital building itself, not extractable. But anyway, I've been here since day one, since the first test. And 3 mayors ago sent me up there to be at all the meetings, and it's been a painful process for them. Millions of dollars spent, lots of oil removed. And I think they're right. That for now, we just have to see what happens when we're not really putting a vacuum in the area under the ground. But they could never have extracted this. There's no way to get at it with the structure of the building right over top of the main part of it.
And I think also the fact that nobody knew exactly when it began leaking. Yeah. So it was discovered after the fact.
That was a changing of the guard. One administrator replaced the other, and he thought that this is the norm. Man, this hospital uses a lot of fuel in the wintertime. Fill it up again, and took them a while to see the trends.
So this is definitely scary stuff, but I think it's accurate to say that at this point, the hospital believes that the pump and treat system has basically done what it can do over the course of almost 30 years. And they're going to pitch the idea to MDE and see what guidance they get from MDE. And trust me, we will be watching this like a hawk between Bob, Bill, and Michael Forlini, our attorney. You know, they get their test results every time there's tests done. And if anything comes up, we will be quick to notify the hospital, and they can always turn the pumps back on if they're granted permission to turn them off. Any other questions about that? Okay, marina update. There's been some really great news actually on the marina fundraising front. Just recently I was down at the marina with representatives from Chesapeake Bank and Trust. They have donated $5,000 to the project and may donate another $5,000 next year to get their name on one of the 9 pillars at the front of the facility, which is a great thing. We've had another major donation of $50,000 from the Ingersoll Stevens family, and they are going to name the plaza next to Scotts Point after a loved one. And then best of all, I don't know if you guys remember that big list that I gave, and the top of the list was naming the building after somebody of $250,000. We actually had an anonymous donor step up and make a $250,000 donation, which is
the anonymous building.
So that's a little bit of a tricky part to it. This person, this is a little bit embarrassing for me, said, and this is really not my style, the condition of the town getting this grant was if I would accept the building to be named after the Serino family. So I said, I can't turn that down. It's going to be kind of weird to be alive and walking around with my name up somewhere like that.
We know, you actually donated it yourself.
So that is like, I can't even tell you, like, nothing short of an absolute miracle. And so you saw the balance of 0 at the beginning of the meeting, and what that represents is basically that everything that's been done to this point has been paid for. And that will also include another layer of paving by Bramble in the spring. And what we had to do while that project was going on, we had so much happening at once. You get to a point with a project of that magnitude where you just can't pull the gears back and get people to stop, even though we hadn't honestly raised all the money we needed to finish the work. We had a line of credit, and we thought we had a line of sight. We had some cost overruns. So this particular donor, these groups of donors have basically done us a huge, huge service by allowing us to pay that line of credit almost down to 0, which is just nothing short of sensational. I can't thank those private donors enough, because in addition to kind of allowing us to pay down the line of credit, the previous individual donors allowed us to activate state grants in particular that required a 1-to-1 match, which is really, really hard for a town of our size to find. And without those private donors, we would have like 1 dock out there right now. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. So what's left to do down there? A couple of things. Probably the biggest single thing is when the boat ramp was installed, there was an error was made. I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but suffice it to say that there was a difference of interpretation between the contractor that put the boat ramp in and the engineer who designed it. The problem is with the boat ramp that's there, it's great at a high tide or even a mid tide, but if you get a blowout low tide, you really can't launch your boat there unless it's like a John boat that you could kind of launch by hand anyway. And we've had a couple problems where people didn't know this and went there at low tide and had their trailer go off the ramp. And if you've never had that happen before, and I have, it like ruins your trailer. So DNR is unhappy with the situation. So you might ask, well, why didn't you go after that contractor? That contractor on paper was supposed to do the rest of the marina. And at that point, and we'd already signed a contract with this person to do this, and it occurred to us that that was probably not good for obvious reasons. And we basically said, look, if you agree to walk on doing the rest of the marina, we have another group that we want to hire for that. You walk from that, you can walk from the ramp, and we'll figure out a way to make it better at a later date. And if we hadn't done that, we probably wouldn't have any marina built out right now. So we were between a rock and a hard place. And the result is, long story short, for that ramp to be made right, it's got to be fixed, and it's not a cheap fix. We still need to run the rest of the fuel line to the end of the fuel dock. That's an operation for which there was no grant program. And then there's little things. Well, the paving I mentioned, that's going to be funded by USDA. The big shed needs to come down. We have a local farmer lined up to do that. He's got some equipment down there. I'm not sure what the holdup has been, but when he goes down there and does that, that shed will come down in like 2 to 3 days, and it's no expense to us. And then we have to do things like set up the office and get the place up and running. So the things we still have to do, total, end of the day, we still need to raise about $200,000. So that's still a big number. And we have some decisions to make. Like Case, in theory, has a contractor lined up in March to fix this ramp. That's about 120 of that 200. But we don't have the money in hand. So the question is, and I didn't want to just give a go-ahead because that's a big number. Like, what do we want to do? Do we want to go ahead and have faith that we can raise the rest of that money? Do we want to push that off? Because if we don't hire this guy in March and the warm months come around, the big contractors go elsewhere and do big jobs. Like, we're really lucky that Dis and June is available in March to even do this. And DNR is putting up a lot of grant money to help us get that number down to 120. That's how big of a fix this is. So that's kind of a question that's out there. If we punt and we say to Dis and June, you know, the council doesn't want to go forward with this in March, it's probably likely that we're going to need to go through the rest of the year with the ramp as it is and just have big signs up that say, don't use this at low tide.
Are you talking about 200 after this, or?
Yes, like, so what's left on the table is about $200,000 of work that's still, like, if we want everything to be done the way we want it done, it's another $200,000.
Do we have any kind of a idea of what the marina will bring in as far as revenue? If we, I know we're not going to fill every slip every day, but I was just wondering where we would be if we go ahead and do this. Will we be able to pay it off in a reasonable amount of time and so forth?
That's a good question. So that kind of gets to the second half of what I was going to talk about with the marina, because we also have decisions to make about how to run this place. Like, do you guys want me to get into that now, or do we still want to talk about like how we want to proceed?
Well, on the ramp itself, are we talking about having to tear up what's there and start over?
Not completely. So we need to extend it about another 20 to 25 feet to get, because at the incline it needs to go out a lot farther. In order to get that done, they need to build this thing called, and again, this is when engineers get involved, and like, there's like Eastern Shore ways you could do this, like go buy a big ass piece of sheet metal and screw it into the concrete. Which if I had my druthers, nobody was watching, maybe we would do that, but the state helped fund this, so they want their engineers to approve this. So they need to bring in this thing called a cofferdam and basically pump it's a dam, and then you pump it out, and then you do what you gotta do, and yes, they would need to remove like the lower fourth of the existing concrete to give them a clean area to attach to, and there's engineering stuff involved that's above my pay grade, but that's why it's such an expensive fix.
My concern in terms of the trailers and whatnot is not so much when they put it in.
Yeah.
It's when they're coming back, they might
I agree.
be coming back at low tide and can't get out.
I agree completely. I mean, we could also maybe add to our existing USDA loan, which is like the lowest interest rate you're ever going to get on borrowed money. I don't know if they would do that because the government's been closed for a month and nobody's home at USDA right now. So
Well, do we still have that line of credit?
we do still have the line of credit.
And that's a very low rate.
It's a relatively low rate. I think it's like 3.5 or 4.
I think the number one choice is to, and we wanted to ask USDA this question, as you said, they're not at work, is can we add it to our loan. I think they're done with giving us grants, so I swear that was another big help when they added on to our grant package. Second is on our line of credit. We still have pillars for naming rights, and we just can't not do this thing with the ramp. We have to do it, and
Well, I look at it as, it's like if you have a restaurant and you give out one bad meal,
Yeah. Where it gets
you
out.
lose 25 customers. And if you have one person who loses their trailer off there, we may not get anybody coming up here. And this is a destination point, so it's almost something, we don't want to start out with a marina that's not something that should be like a first-class marina, at least for launching boats. Because we're not going to be in the repair business.
Well, let me talk a little bit about possible management structures. So I've been actually working this, I don't know if you guys know Matt Chabriner. He was very instrumental in the original port study group that was put together to kind of assess, what it would take for the town to get involved with this. So he came to me about a month ago and said, would you mind if I put together an informal group of folks like the folks that I worked with previously, and we can just meet informally and make recommendations to the town. So I've been meeting with those guys. And the main thing we've been looking at initially was the management structure, like how, when people come up here, how are we gonna staff this place? Like, what do we wanna do? So one idea that was interesting was hiring a management company. And there's companies out there, and all they do is they manage marinas. So there's 3 groups. One's called Oasis, and they have marinas all around the Chesapeake Bay. Usually they're much bigger than us, but their most recent involvement was with, they took over operations of Cambridge and their municipal marina. There's a group called Coastal Management, and there's another group called Safe Harbor. So we've talked to representatives from all 3 of these groups. Safe Harbor wasn't interested because what their model is they come in and they lease your facility. Like, they basically pay you rent to use your marina, and they want like a 30-year lease so that basically they can take ownership of the facility. They weren't interested because we're basically really small. We have about 55 rentable slips. So Safe Harbor basically said, you have a beautiful facility. I think you're gonna do really well with it, but it's too small for what we do. Coastal Properties had a similar take, that they generally, the other structure, and this is what we have one offer. Oasis came in and said, we'll manage it, and our fee is $4,000 a month. So basically, you pay them, to use round numbers, if we were to hire Oasis, we would pay them about $50,000 a year to run the marina. Then, what they do is they take our 50 grand and they basically hire a manager. And then the manager has the authority to run the facility, hire other people. What they bring to the table is a big advertising wing. Like, they can send out an email to every boating club on the bay and say, there's this awesome new place in Chestertown, you should put this on your itinerary. So what they bring to the table is all of the salesmanship. But in addition to the 50 grand we pay them, they also take a big cut of the revenue that comes in from the slip fee. So I see how they make money. What I don't see is how really we make any money, other than to get it off our hands and be like, you guys run it for us, please. And this is a great deal because we don't have to deal with like toilet papers in the bathroom and stuff. So then we went to Safe Harbor and we said, all right, if you guys aren't interested in the lease, what structure would you recommend? Like, how would you recommend staffing it? And the guy basically said, for your size, we would say, hire one person that's essentially like manages the facility. When the warm weather months come around, hire a few high school interns, and maybe that manager in November through March either doesn't work or works less hours, or maybe you get a retired person that's willing to just come in seasonally. And at the end of the day, that's basically what the town has always been doing since we've owned this. We've had one person run it, hired high school kids in the peak months. So it was good to hear that the model we've already been using is essentially what these guys would do. So from where I'm sitting, it's like, why would we pay somebody else to do that and then give them revenue from our slip rentals, when we can just hire that person ourselves and keep 100% of the slip rentals. So I guess what I'm saying is, this group, I think, and I'm talking to these really knowledgeable people, we've kind of started coming to a consensus that probably the way we're going to make the most revenue is to hire that person and run it ourselves. It's tough for me because I know I'm going to get a call at like 2 a.m. from some boater saying, hey, the toilet's clogged, what are you doing, mister? No, but it is what it is. Like, I think we need to maximize our revenues. The key is going to be finding that person who can take pressure off Amanda to do the books when people come and make reservations.
Will that person also be doing the marketing, or they?
So that's a whole separate entity. So I'm just going to go down this list of recommendations that this group is making to us. And these are very good people. Can you name all the people in the group?
Well, Ray Carrick, Bill Harwood, Taylor Buckley,
Tom Mack,
myself, and you.
Peter Sweetser.
Peter here?
I don't see.
Who does the book work?
Right now, Amanda does the book work at Town Hall.
Well, and that would continue? Because that could be time consuming.
Well, yeah, the problem is the link of the staffer in the marina has always been, they haven't done what Amanda needs to have done at the end of any given day or any given week or any given month. So she has to do an awful lot of checking and going down there. In fact, that's how we got her. We had her at the marina as a temporary from the bank. And she's turned into a fabulous employee, knows what she's doing, but she needs that person down there to know what they're doing. So it syncs up with our bookkeeping. Otherwise, she's down there doing it all the time, and it's disruptive to us because she has a huge job now, running the finances here.
So here's some recommendations. So in addition to deciding on our management structure, we also need to start marketing this thing. And the good news is, word has already gotten out. We've had some really good press lately, photographs. Like our Tea Party weekend, the marina is booked. Jazz Fest weekend, the marina is full. And I think any weekend like that where we have events already, we're going to be pretty full. The challenge will be marketing the marina for July 13th, when there isn't a big event, but it's a good boating time of the year. So a couple of recommendations. One that I know Marty, this is on marketing, that I know Marty will enjoy, is these guys really felt like we should name this the Port of Chestertown, not Chestertown Marina. Would you concur, Marty?
I just thought that we're more like a park in a dock than we are a marina, because we're not going to do repairs. So, and there is something to the name. People associate it with it. So that's the reason I thought we'd do that. And of course, I also thought it would help us get us some grant money, but you've already did such a super job with that.
So possibly renaming this the Port of Chestertown or the Port of Chestertown Municipal Marina underneath, so people know that you book slips there. A website. If you look at any successful marina in today's market, they all have their own website. So we probably need to work with Francois and Moo Productions, who does the town's website, and have her create a website specifically for the marina that's directly linked to our town website, and they could just coexist that way. Main Street, it'd be really awesome if we could meet with Kay McIntosh and her crew and just brainstorm ideas that don't cost a ton of money to get the word out to people. Come to Chestertown. The marina is up and running and open for business. And coming up with some sort of christening event, whether that's in May. For me, I think maybe like Labor Day, when we know all the work that we're going to get done this year is done. Something like that where we honor the donors that wanted things named after loved ones. We have the bricks and grave, we have everything done, and we like invite the governor and have a big to-do about it. This is to the business side. One thing that all these guys strongly recommended was having an online slip reservation system. There's a number of programs out there. The one that came through the most was this program called DOCWA, D-O-C-K-W-A. And basically what it allows is for somebody to go online at midnight that might want to come here in 4 days and request a slip online. that request gets sort of banked, and then when Amanda or whoever's working down there gets to work during their normal business hours, they can pull up requests for docking, so they don't have to be there to answer a phone. And the basic services from this particular company are free, and then you can go up incrementally and pay fees the more you want them to do that. We also, Bill and myself, and Case and Amanda kind of looked at the dock layout. We have, I think, probably as many seasonal slip holders as are going to come back in the short term. So we determined that we have about 15 transient slips for people coming to visit. And I can email you guys the layout of how that looks right now. We talked a lot in this committee about how this would look from an operational standpoint. I already kind of covered it. And again, this is coming not just from this committee, but from these consultants. And again, having a manager on site, it's basically like the general manager, hopefully keeps books that are compatible with what Amanda wants to see, and then bringing in seasonal temporary folks during the warm weather months. We talked about having, it was still important to have the travel lift operating if somebody needs to get pulled out in emergency, but also it allows us to have winter storage and pull people back in the spring. And this group is willing to continue their work, you know, indefinitely, as long as we're interested in having them help us out. There's some really good brain power in this group. And lastly, just services that we'll offer, and we need to, get the word out about what we have to offer boaters when they come up maybe in the website. We need them to know that our docks have electric and water. We need them to know that we're going to be selling fuel. We need them to know we have waste pump out, which is a big deal. We need people to know exactly what our travel lift is and isn't able to accomplish for them. Winter storage, boat launching. We talked about security. I know we have security cameras up, so that's great. That's a big improvement. And also we want to make sure that when people come there and they go to that building, that there's information about the town. So that there's maybe, like when you go in the visitor center over here, there's a big thing of rack cards for every business downtown. We need that down there. And maybe we replicate the sign that's on the corner of Cross and High and have it down there. It says, "You are here now, go up here." And again, that would be a great thing to coordinate with Main Street, because that's kind of what they do. And then we also need to advertise there's an awesome kayak launch down there, kayak or canoe launch on the side of the Scotts Point dock. So we need to basically get all this out there.
Well, it's on the John Smith Water Trail.
I know. So basically, I'd be willing to work with our web person to create this page. I have tons of photographs, not just mine, but Sam Shogay's aerials. And I think, you know, we could set something up in a week that visually gives that image, like, this is a cool place that we want you to come visit. So that's kind of what this group has come up with. So I think in the next, the thing that's kind of crazy about all these decisions is, like, people are already reserving slips while we're kind of brainstorming how we want this to look.
You still don't have a number, though, that you think that you would...
So you took a stab at a preliminary budget.
I do. I asked Amanda to put together the known debt that we have from the two bond issues, the one to purchase and the one that the USDA extended to us, and various and sundry things, and also projecting about 80%. Actually, length of boats makes it a big difference. The bigger the boat, the more money we get for transients. And it looks like, I can't say that it works 100% because we don't know exactly who's going to be here, but it is definitely manageable, and you do not want to be adding another $50,000 debt to somebody else to do it. So I have the numbers for you. They're very preliminary, but we needed them for now to kind of make this decision. Do we have enough there? If the other problem that we have with turning this over on a lease basis to anyone else is it may make us a taxable entity. This is very important because we don't pay taxes on the marina part of it in the way we operate our business now. I think the last tax bill I saw for the place was upwards of $25,000 a year when we argued about what was taxable and what was not. So I don't want to disturb that. We cannot disturb that because it would be the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's, and also you lose a little bit. We have some family and friends, things that we people who use our marina annually that have a mission on the river, DNR is one of them, that they don't pay 100% of the rate that a boater would pay transient-wise or whatever. But they're important to the upper part of the river and to us. Shore Rivers, another one. We would lose the ability to do that if somebody else takes over. They would have the rate, and that rate would be their rate. So I think we're going to have to run this ourselves. The ladies in the office have drafted up some different kind of things for a marina manager that incorporate what they need as well as what we get from other advertisements for that. I think there are people here like that. We have an excellent person who works for us now that I think would like to be marina manager, but what he's really good at is the things that happen on the ground around the marina, not the financial aspect of it. This is where we need somebody sharp. And when we first bought the marina, I bet we had 4 or 5 people who were saying, I'd like to do that right now. They might have aged out. I don't have all their names, but I have some of them. But I think if we put an advertisement out for that, we'd see the kind of person we get, the kind of experience they would have.
So in terms of how much we're gonna net and then pay down the debt, I think that's a real, I don't think we can say with really a lot of confidence because we haven't had a decent facility for so long. I'm hopeful that we can pay down a much bigger chunk than we were able to beforehand.
I think whoever we hire, we ought to have some kind of system in there where
some incentives.
He gets a bonus at the end of the year, and his bonus depends on how much we grow and how much we gross.
Yeah.
Because there has to be something
tied to performance.
Some kind of incentive for him to be willing to go down there every holiday and
yes.
work.
Well, that fizzles after a while. After having done this for a few years, they're gung-ho, they're going to work, no one's going to work 7 days a week. They're going to work weekends, and then weddings occur, graduations occur, and pretty soon you're like, who else can do this? And we scrambled a lot. We've had some terrific young people, high school seniors that this is their first job, and we've had great experience, I think, with that. Great way to meet people, and there's a lot of talent around. I think this would be a good job for somebody. Whether we're going to be able to add incentives, I don't know, but I think I just think that promoting this thing is going to be a little easier because it's brand new. We already had a question. I don't know how many of you remember the guy who comes up the river and does the Marina magazine. He stays at your marina for a week, gets the flavor of it, films it coming up the river. He did a great job 5 years ago. Made our marina look like so inviting. But he's offered to do it again. It's a matter of giving him a free berth for a week and $450 in there. You get an awful lot of exposure in his virtual magazine.
Well, I was reading one, January, it's one of the shore magazines, and there's a big article.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and there's more coming. Spin Sheet's doing a big one. So we're getting a lot of great free press. One of the interesting things, we talked on one of these, this guy from Safe Harbor, they manage like 300 marinas nationwide, and we said, how many brand new marinas are there? And it was an interesting question. I don't think anyone really asked him, and he said, I can think of like 1 or 2 nationwide. So we have a very unique product, and we have a really unique town. It's, how that translates into revenue is like kind of, we will know by the end of this fiscal year, like how much better the prognosis is.
Several weeks ago, you had an inquiry from some organization that wanted to use this as a festival, and the question was whether we could give them concessionary. What's happened? Is it still out there?
So I talked to Amanda about that, and what we talked about was what all the transients want are the floating docks. It's much, much easier to dock there because once you tie your boat up, your boat just rises and falls, so you never need to adjust the lines. So in talking with Bill and Amanda, I think what we're going to do is offer them very good deal on all the slips on the Cannon Street fixed pier. And the hope there is that if we occupy that with a really cool fleet of buy boats, that will then attract transients. And they're coming on like July 26th, which is one of those random weekends I was talking about, where hopefully if we have a really cool thing happening, that will bring transient people up to participate. And the gentleman that's putting this together is talking about paying for a tent in the plaza and having live music that he will pay for. There may be like an associated lecture at Sultana's building, and kind of making it almost like a mini downrigging. And if that happens, then I think we definitely get the most bang for the buck. And these are also people that you want coming to your marina, that have the means to help out with what the money we need to raise, and will bring back people that have the means to spend a lot of money in town. All right, I think I've talked enough. Why don't we go to ward reports and start on your end tonight, David?
Good talk, though.
Marty and Reverend Tolliver and I went to the Council of Governments meeting in Galena, and I think, as always, it's a good opportunity to see what's happening in the other towns. And we also had 2 county commissioners there, Bob Jacob and Tom, I forgot his name already, Tom Mason. Gave us a few hints as to what they're going to do, and then we're still trying to decipher what they're going to do with regard to the tax differential, but they know that we continue to be interested in that. Let's see, on Monday, Chief Baker and I were at the Martin Luther King celebration there in Rock Hall, and that was really a very good event. The questions I get asked around town about the marina, and now I'm in a much better position to respond to people in our ward, what's going on there. And the other is about the roads and what are our plans on that. But they seem to be very pleased with the kinds of things that are in the mayor's report, and I may want to borrow some pictures from that to show to some of the people at Heron Point, because I know that they're interested. So the sense is that people are really upbeat with the theater and all of this, but they are still asking, I'm saying, in terms of the just comments from people on the street and people about the marina. I think they'll be pleased with this, and about the roads. That's it.
Okay, the concert series is starting at Sumner Hall again on February 9th, and Phil Dutton is going to be there. The tickets are $20, and it's 7 to 10, and he's going to be playing New Orleans piano. Now, I have another request. I know that the water main, the water pipe broke on Park Row in 2 places, because you couldn't help see the water going all down Park Row and Cross Street. There is a hole over on the farmer's market side where Lockbriar sets up, that several people have almost fallen there. I was wondering if, when you do the blacktop on top of the water main break, if they can fill in that hole.
Yeah, was it a water main or a lateral?
Whatever.
Okay.
It was water.
All right. Well, there's a difference. But yes, anytime we're doing, we don't have.
But it's right across
there's
the
no hot
street.
mix this time of year, but we
I
can
know.
we can actually fix that right now with Cold Patch, the street crew.
Perfect. Okay. I am really trying to convince someone who comes to the market to be the market manager, and after all these years that I've been on the council, here's the farmer's market, right here in this book. I've got every single thing organized, and
Nice.
the farmers had requested a meeting, and I talked to Barbara Macbeth this evening when she was here. She's gone in as president of the garden club, and I was requesting that she come to this meeting. I'd like to have the meeting upstairs. Barb's going to be gone the whole month of February, and we only have like a week left in January, so maybe like the first week in March, which isn't really going to affect anything because we just have the winter market now. Because the person I'm trying to recruit and myself think we could really, really spruce up the market. We could bring music back to the market. We can get a website going that's attached to the town website. And then the garden club especially, because if I kind of know what the revenue is for the first 6 months, and so then I'll know what basically the revenue is for the year. I only have some fixed expenses now, which is the market manager, and I'll have to get to with Amanda to find out exactly what 2018 expenses were for Fountain Park. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to cut those lights out of the tree here on the corner because it's choking the trunk of the tree. And you want to put that on your list of things to do, or I'm going to go down there and cut them out.
We can do it after the meeting, that way.
Okay.
We'll be able to
I
find
already
them, turn them
told
on and
Chief
yank
that
them off.
if he gets a complaint about some woman in the park, cutting the lights out of the trees.
You mean the
it's
ones
me.
on this corner?
Right here on this corner. And,
I think it's both corners of the Fountain Park.
Yeah, Fountain
Who
Park.
put them up, do you know? Who's gonna care?
They've been up
They've been
there
up a
so
couple
long that
years.
they're
Yeah, I
growing
know.
in, that the trunk is, they're embedded in the trunk. But anyway, that's another thing. So
when I take
I
it
just
down.
want to kind of get an idea of what the actual revenue is after expenses to see if we can work with the garden club. And then get with the farmers that we may be moving you, because we're going to work on this section, whatever. And it's a letter day that I agreed with Marty to have the market over on High Street with back in. And I do have new vendors, 2 from Cecil County and 1 community organization that would like to become a permanent vendor in the farmer's market. So
When is this person going to decide?
I'm like,
Do they
I
need
told
some
her,
arm twisting?
I told her, I said, I am there to support you 100%, and like I said, I have.
There's a surprisingly large amount of drama involved in that job. Just so you know.
I said I have everything organized, but you want to pick a date? I mean, who wants to be there?
I'll be
We
there.
could have the meeting upstairs, and I do
Why
not
don't we do it
wanna-
via email? Well,
Yeah, but I mean, the first week in March.
March, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, March is good.
and a Wednesday,
All right.
because I can't do it on a Monday or Tuesday. And we already have 20, and it might be 21 here,
That's great.
vendors who have already paid their contract fee.
Most farmers markets have the exact opposite problem that we have. They can't get enough vendors to get a critical mass to get people to come. So we have a great problem on our hands there.
Well, we've expanded it to Cecil County, and possibly picked up a winery and another organic farmer in Cecil County, so.
Great.
And then we could just, Jen, I have more email addresses, and we could just send out a group email
Okay, that's
on a
reasonable.
date and maybe an agenda.
Sounds good.
So I don't want to rehash the last 6 months. So that's it for Ward 2.
All right.
All right. I'd like to defer to Marty and go last, because 2 of the gentlemen that are here to talk about the Cannon Street parking are related to Third Ward issues. So, Marty, if you don't mind going, then I'll go last tonight.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Gonna save the hotbed till last.
Yes, sir.
Well, Dave mentioned the fact that we went to the Council of Government, and
Yes.
we had 4 of the towns. Rock Hall didn't show up to give their report, and it's always nice after a 2-month layoff to hear how they're doing. But the county commissioners came in and gave their report, and part of it was on the solar field that's out there.
Yep.
And the gist I got was that they're not much in favor of it. In
Right.
fact, they've pretty much come out and said they're not against it. I mean, they are against it. And so that was a big relief. That was worth my trip up to the Kitty Knight House just to hear him say that. I did notice when I read the judge's opinion of why he threw out that suit and the other, and postponed it. I'm sorry, I didn't throw it out. And they have to have an archaeological dig. I'm just hoping they find Pocahontas's house or something out there, and we don't get it built.
Pocahontas's house.
We did have a talk by the executive director of the, what is her name? What is the name of that organization? The Upper Shore Regional Council, which is a group put together mainly, I guess, the farmers in that area. They're all over the state, but ours is Cecil, Kent, and Queen Anne's County, and they promote keeping this area rural, and they also, the businesses that go with that. And I thought it was interesting that their office is right here in Chestertown on Cross Street. You knew that?
I've met with them before.
Oh, you mean they rent from us?
Yeah, that way? Yeah, they said North Cross
At the
Street.
visitor center, upstairs.
So I thought that was worthwhile too. It's nice to know that, and that was about it. Everything in the fourth ward is frozen over, so we don't have anything to worry about. It's just cold as the devil. So.
Yes, it is.
Now you don't have that problem. So you got a hotbed. It's cold in the fourth
We keep it
ward.
warm in the third ward, but I enjoyed going to the council of government meeting as well. And I think Marty does an excellent job talking about Chestertown. One of the things that kind of, I won't say it struck me in a bad way, but the Council of Government appeared to be a lot of agriculture, talk about agriculture and things related to that industry. And I think, you know, if we as town council give Marty information about what we're doing, what's going on in Chestertown, because I believe that our narrative should be driving the conversation in that organization. We're the largest municipality in the county, probably the largest tax revenue base, but and like I said, Marty does a great job representing us, and I was very happy to be there with Dave, along with Dave, to support what we do here in Chestertown, and let them know that hey, we really are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So I would like to see that happen more. So I had a conversation. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this, but I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Greensboro incident and the young man who was a former resident of Chestertown in Kent County. I've been in conversation with our chief, and we're going to discuss some strategies that we would try to implement in the event that this type of incident would occur, to keep this type of incident from occurring in Chestertown. I'm going to be advocating for a citizens review board, and also something that will help keep our officers trained in crisis intervention, which will really stem the tide in any type of negative type of incident that may occur with any of our young people. I've been also involved in this Queen Anne's County issue with State Highway and the intersection of 544 and 290. State Highway has agreed to put a four-way stop there, that intersection, based on the death of a young lady that occurred a couple of months ago. So the residents aren't totally happy. They wanted a traffic light, but State Highway has come through, at least to this point. Now, the reason why I say that is there's new management with State Highway. I'm not sure whether you know, or you probably are, but there's a new guy that's running everything, and I think this might be our opportunity to maybe go back to him and try to talk to him a little more about our what's the name of the highway down there by the college and all that, where Stepney Manor is. To maybe take a second look at that.
289.
289. Maybe take a second look at that, since they turned us down the first time with this. He seemed to be amenable. He seemed like a nice guy. He seemed like he wants to try to solve problems, but he also admitted that he was new and not quite familiar with some of the things that people are asking. So it might be a good opportunity for us to go back to check him out again. And I cannot say how excited I am about the request for proposal for Carpenter Park in Washington Park.
It's already available online on the town website. It'll be in the papers tomorrow, and we're hoping that could get going and be open by the summer.
That'd be awesome.
And, I have two gentlemen here tonight that want to talk about the Cannon Street parking issue. So, whichever one would like to come first, Dan or Bob.
Hi, my name is Daniel Menifee. For those who don't know me, just kidding. I live in the 500 block of Cannon Street. And about a decade ago, we had some pavers put in on our street, and signs saying no parking on this side of the street were removed. Gradually over time, parking began on our side of the street, and as a result, traffic slowed down quite significantly, and we were in less competition with people on the even side of the street who have often told us, please don't park in front of our house. So when our driveways are full, or if we have visitors, they have to park down in the 400 block of Cannon Street. So I thought that I would go around just to see who would want parking on both sides of the street. And I have roughly 34 signatures from 30 households stretching from the 400 block to the 600 block. Now, I don't know if the 600 block or not has parking on both sides, but tonight as I took a ride around, and there was parking on both sides of the street, and that street, for some reason, is a little bit narrower than the 400 and 500 blocks. So we've had some development up on Cannon Street in the 400 and 500 block in the last few years. Good stuff. Some houses were built in the 400 block and in the 200 block. Some of these families have kids. One of the individuals that was in favor of parking on the odd side of the street is they're actually a transit authority police officer for kids. And yes, it's a little tight, but oil deliveries still happen, things still happen, and it's no tighter. It's actually, there's more room moving up and down Cannon Street with two-side parking than there would be on College Avenue, which has parking on both sides. So we know it's a little tight, but what I've noticed is that the traffic moves a lot slower. I saw it the other day in my attic window looking out at the corner of Kent and Cannon, and I did notice that even though the traffic, most of the time they don't stop at the stop sign, they do what they call a Hollywood stop. I'm sure you know what that is. And but at least they slow down a little bit. So, and interestingly, a lot of the signatures I got were from the even side of the street. So they want us to be able to park in front of our homes, and we think it's a good idea. And it's slower traffic is safer traffic. And so I have this petition I have given my ward councilman, Reverend Tolliver. I've given him a copy of the signatures.
Were there any residents that were like, no, I don't want both
To be fair, out of the 30 households and 34 signatures, there were approximately 5 households that didn't want it. And there's also been some concern, and I understand, so I tried to put the shoe on the other foot here with the concerns at Radcliffe. They have expressed concerns over the last few years, according to Bill, about getting onto Cannon Street from Radcliffe. Well, this is kind of no more difficult than getting onto High Street from Mill. If there's cars parked on the corner, you're stretching like heck to see around and make sure you don't get whacked when you get out there. So about a week ago, the signs were put back up saying no parking on this side of the street. And as a result, people got some warning tickets. And the traffic is really starting to move through there. I mean, they use it as basically a bypass to take the heat off High Street, and they are moving. Now, I've been trying to get in shape, and so you might see me running around town a lot. I was coming up Cannon Street a couple of weeks ago, and I'm glad that cars have those collapsible rear view mirrors when you get hit, but I was running up in the 400 block, and a car went by, and the passenger rear view mirror whacked me in the elbow. And I just think if the car was going slower, it might not have hit me. It didn't even probably know it hit me, it just kept on going. But if you were to sit there and observe when there's traffic on both sides, you would notice that the traffic moves a lot slower. And oil trucks still make their deliveries, people still get around, they're just going slower. And I think it would be good. The northern part of Chestertown, the north end, Cannon Street is growing. And I ask that the council consider allowing parking on both sides. Now, to allay concerns from people coming up with Radcliffe, and I think Bill mentioned this in the conversation, that we could do some significant setbacks from the corner so that when people get up to the corner, they see where they're going. But for people to say that the street's too narrow, I actually measured it with a tape measure of the streets, and it's 31 or 32 inches, 32 feet wide. And College is only like 27, and they still manage its tight. So just ask them to give us that consideration, but also look out for the people on Radcliffe and make sure that they can merge on. Actually,
What would we think might work on the corner, like yellow curbs for like 2 spaces in?
Yeah,
Something like that?
I think it's gonna be more than 2 spaces. I mean, it's really, just from what I don't want to interrupt what you're saying, but since, and I don't know whether it was 10 years ago or 5.
whenever we got the brickwork.
Yeah, we did the brickwork, and I guess they pulled up the signs to make way for, they never went back, but 3 people on Radcliffe never stopped calling, never stopped saying when they paid their quarterly bills for water and sewer, hey, this is a real danger, somebody's going to get hurt. I brought it up to Chief before. Now, I didn't order these signs to be put up. The street department took it on their own because they felt that plowing snow, it was a tight street.
I have an answer to that.
Well, I agree with you about other streets being, I think because we're a democracy, you as a council has to weigh, the better good. So, there's traffic calming issues here, and there's the fears of the people in Radcliffe that they can't get out. And if it's a van there, it's a whole lot different than a Yugo. It's just,
Is it a 4-way stop there?
It's a 4-way stop.
But to ban parking totally on the odd side of the street is not realistic with the growth that is happening in the northern part of Cannon Street. So there is overflow traffic coming from Kent Street that has to go into the 400 block, so they're now competing with people in the 500 block who can't park on their side of the street. There are several people on the odd side of the street that don't have driveways. I mean, we have driveways, we can put 2 cars there, we have a 3rd vehicle. So I think we can compromise, and instead of saying absolutely no parking on the outside of the street, I think the setbacks can be significant enough to at least allow maybe 5, 6, 7, or 8 cars to be on the odd side of Cannon Street.
When you say setback, what are you referring to?
I mean setback, so when you come up to the corner of Radcliffe, that the cars are parked far enough down the street so somebody can see oncoming traffic.
That's what I was saying, like you could put yellow curbage.
Right. That's right.
It's like 3 cars deep or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's what you had to talk about.
That's what and so you might pick up a dozen or half a dozen spaces on the outside. It might not be as much as the even side, but there's even folks on the even side that don't have driveways. And what was interesting about doing this, collecting these signatures, is for one thing, they immediately, I didn't have to twist any arm. There was no hard selling. They just wanted they want the parking to be available because they know that, they have people that come to visit, or they don't have a driveway, and they need to be able to use both sides of the street. It's also kind of ridiculous for, if you are on the side of the street that allows parking, to tell people on the other side of the street where there is no parking, hey, don't park in front of my house.
Yeah.
So, I just think there's a compromise here, and I've reached out to my ward councilman, and I even talked to Linda about it, whose ward was involved. So
Chief had his comment.
Yeah, I just want
Then we'll
to
get to
say,
Bob.
one other relevant consideration is emergency equipment, like fire trucks.
Oh, I was going to answer that too. I would have no problem with, and I don't think any of the signers here would have any problem with on the odd side of the street saying no parking during snow emergency. I mean,
All right, good.
I mean, that would be a reasonable compromise. But, you know, we have elderly people sometimes that come to visit us at our house, friends, and, you know, I want them to be able to park in front of our house if, you know, if our driveway's full and not have to compete with the even side of the street. And there's also a lot of kids coming down that street. They come over from Calvert Street, they walk down to the Ajax basketball court. There's no sidewalks in the 600 block, for instance, of Kansas Street, so people use the streets. And like I say, slower traffic is safer traffic. That's all I'm asking.
Do we have signs that say no parking during snow emergency?
We don't really have snow emergency routes, but I think I'm gonna have to I hadn't thought about emergency vehicles. I think the first step, if we remove these signs, is to have no parking here at a corner at that intersection, so that vehicles can get in and out safely. And I really, you know, I do recall that they were posted for no parking for a lot of years, and aerial photographs have backed that up. But it really is a town council decision. There's not a community memory of those signs for most people. There's been that much turnover. So it's up to you. I think we're leaving out the people who complain from Radcliffe, and I think Chief was involved in that on more than one occasion in the past where they spoke up. So I think whatever you do should be on a trial basis. So if you're gonna paint the curbs back, which is tough in the winter, but use signs and move them back. People on the corners are gonna complain about their parking right in front of their house, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And also, we have two different wards here, you know, right at the Radcliffe. So I think your input's important, how you see it, in a way, for the council. It's no win. It's a lose-lose thing.
I think a trial basis is good. If you do a significant setback from the corners and you get no, or even have to do more, but allowing some parking on the odd side of the street will take the heat off the overflow of Kent Street, and I mean, I've been there for 15 years now, and there's a greater number of cars up there. There's a greater need for more parking.
No question.
Are the setbacks that you're talking about any different than the setbacks that already exist on the corner between High and Kent Street?
I think they'll be a little bit longer than, usually it's a 20-foot or 30-foot radius that's painted on the curbs. And painting has to be done over and over, so I like no parking here at corner signs a little bit better. They're better for the environment because you're not painting every 2 years or people are painting them off.
If they have to be a little longer than normal.
And you can see them in the snow.
If the setbacks have to be a little larger, you know, like 8 more feet than normal, that's fine, but it would still give some relief to parking on that side. I'd like to thank the council for that.
Thanks for your patience waiting for your turn. It's been a long meeting. Yeah.
I gotta say, it's pretty exciting in here. You know, after a year, I've been around, you know, in the town council meetings after I lost my buddy here. It's great seeing you. So yeah, you guys know I'm a CPA. I've invested in this town. I work in this town. I have a business here, and I also have invested in a house on Cannon Street, 524 Cannon Street. And that frontage of my house is no wider than this. There is no driveway. So when I spoke to my renter on Friday night, she told me, "Oh, there's signs, no parking across the street." I knew I lost it. I lived in Montgomery County for 30 years on street parking. Never had a problem parking in front of my house. And here I am in Chestertown. My renter's gonna have a hard time finding a place to park, you know. And, you know, it just didn't make any sense to me. And when I drove down the street, I saw these signs up. Did anybody tell anybody on the street these were going up? You said the traffic department just one day just painted the signs up?
Basically how it happened.
Is that how it normally would happen?
Well, because they had been up before, they felt like they were just putting them back up.
Well, how long have they been down?
Well, Dan says 10, I say not 10.
10 years?
No, I don't think it's 10 years.
No, in 2007, we had a deal with the town to put pavers in front of our house, and that's
Really?
Remember that's when I.
Well, I remember fixing your driveway and putting bricks down there, and
That was 2007.
wow, time flies.
So I met the, I guess it's the state police that lives across the street from me, and we were just talking about, well, what do you guys, how does it work in parking? Well, catch as you can, like any place, but mostly you can have a place in front of your house. But then when this thing came up, it's like, oh my God, there's like, my renter is going to be parking like 2 blocks down. I mean, just going to be no place for her to park. I mean, anyway, so that was the whole thing about, so I kind of lost it. I wrote some emails to my buddies here, and I just couldn't, what I wrote here was funny, is that Cannon Street is a historical district, right? But it will become a hysterical district when residents lose their patience over trying to find a place to park. And we can't have this. Cannon Street's an awesome street. I mean, in terms of buying onto Cannon Street, everybody should buy on Cannon Street. It's a great street. It would really be a shame to lose that parking across the street. One thing, years and years ago, I was a finance officer for an organization in DC called the Transportation Research Board, part of the National Academy of Sciences. So just like I am kind of a researchy kind of guy, I went and looked at some papers, and I found in 2008 there was an article that kind of represented what you just said. Low-speed streets with on-street parking also had the lowest fatality and severe crash rates of any road category in the study done in Connecticut on 250 roadway segments. Results suggest that these places are safer, more walkable, and more vitality. So, there's research out there that shows exactly what we're talking about. So if we put more cars there, it's going to slow people down, and you won't get hit, with a side view mirror running, which kind of seems to be out there. They do talk about when there is sort of restrictions on street parking, what happens? Well, you've got vehicles in search of looking for places to park. It's got an environmental and economic impact, right? Increased traffic flow. What was the other thing it said? It said heightened pollutant emissions levels, if you can get down to that, create additional noise, it goes on and on and on, right? So having a lot of, there's research that says, having on-street parking on both sides is actually a good thing. And I get it with the emergency vehicles, but look, you can look at that feeder street, Kent Street from high, that's a very narrow street. So there are a lot of narrow streets that have, parking on both sides. I wouldn't want to exclude Cannon out of that. So, I'm in favor of, obviously, both sides, parking on both sides, I think is a benefit for the people that live there. And yeah, slowing traffic down. I've been there when people zip through that corridor there, even when there is parking on both sides. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like there might be a compromise where we allow parking on both sides and set yellow curbage or signage back 2 to 3 spaces so that larger vehicles have room to make that turn, especially like a fire truck, for example.
There's one thing, I can draw this for you. In Montgomery County, where I live, there's a street like this. And what they did in the road, they drew a line, a curved line like that. So what would happen is people would see visually on the road, the line, you can't park inside this curved area. And so it became, that way it let people were set back in the parking. They could park here, they couldn't park here because of that curve. So sometimes even putting lines like on the side of the road where parking is, does allow that visual sort of, protection, if you will, people coming around corners.
So what should we do, Bill?
Signs are the best. Signs are the best because when snow's there, you can't see yellow curbs or paint on the street.
Yeah.
I think we put in no parking here, the corner signs, we direct the street department to order them and I think the petition, I'm not a vote council member, but I think the petition speaks for itself. They asked just
So
about
are you guys
everybody.
going to help us when
Yeah.
other people complain?
Yeah, I have no problem talking about the people.
Well, there's an effort made in both directions to
I think it's interesting, most of the time we have people coming in here and complaining about people parking, and they don't want no parking. And here we have people want parking, but...
Oh, yeah,
All right, we have another,
the limitation.
we have another comment.
Throw in, and I live at 110 South Kent Street. And I just want to also tell the 2 gentlemen that I agree with you. Cannon and Kent Street are really nice streets. They're really coming around. It's a nice area to live in. Parking can be a problem, but it also depends on what time of day. You can go down the street during the daytime And there's plenty of cars because everybody's out. When everyone's home, it's a problem. And we have a few renovations that have occurred even as far up as High Street. There's a beautiful renovation that was just completed last year, and now it has 5 apartments in it. And those folks come down to my end of Cannon, which is the further south end, closer to Kent Street, to Cannon, and they park in front of my house. So therefore, I have to go onto Cannon. Park on
Is Kent Street the same width there?
What's that?
It's narrow.
It's very narrow. It's parking one side, but
And the fire trucks down there, and police cars all driving down.
your block has parking on both
We
sides?
have parking on both
Yeah.
sides.
It's a one-way street.
It's a one-way, yeah, it's
street.
one way. That's,
Towards-
it's too narrow to have two-way with,
But it is a problem because we have multiple family homes and everybody's got cars.
and there's more housing coming in the future. Because
Yeah.
Cannon Street is gonna
It's an up-and-coming
continue to
neighborhood.
be a popular block. And
All this land right there in that corner of Radcliffe and Cannon, it's
And
2 empty lots.
there'll be more on that later.
Could you tell me,
Good.
please, why there doesn't seem to be any parking on Radcliffe Drive? It's the street that's just beyond Cannon,
Well,
where the
there's,
empty lot is.
on which side? There's parking allowed on the right side as you go
How
south.
about not on the left side?
I don't know that it's marked for that. I don't think there's anybody there to park there.
But that would be a place
There's a-
the extra cars could
Yeah,
park.
I think you'll see something happen with that large Atkins Lumber Company site in the next year. So, I think we
Or hope
need,
they have parking.
yeah, and I think there, without talking out of school, though the alley isn't great behind the 500 on the even side, there is an alley behind there that a lot of people use for their parking, but tremendous improvement. It couldn't hope for more on Cannon Street than has occurred. I think the public really has spoken here, so.
All right, do we want to make a motion?
You know, I think that what Bill said, put up the no parking to the corner and that'll-
How far back?
well, I
If you
think
leave that up to me, we're
Okay,
gonna
I'll
see
make the
where the
motion.
spot is. We're gonna move, we may have to move the sign twice. I think the key one is looking west, coming out of Radcliffe. I mean, obviously on the right, it's not an issue, it's looking left. Who's coming? Yes, looking towards the west. Who's coming down that street?
All right, look, it's almost 10 o'clock. Are you ready to make a motion?
I'm making the motion that we investigate changing the parking signs and with the necessary details ironed out in committee.
So you're suggesting that we allow,
Yes.
don't use investigate, that's too,
I really like that.
Yes, we'll change, I'm making the motion that we change the parking to allow parking on both sides of the street.
with the condition.
With the condition. Of the corner being clear. With the condition of the necessary adjustments that need to be made. It could be more than just the corner.
Okay.
Appropriate second.
I second it.
All right, all those in favor?
All right. All right.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Patience is paid off.
Yes.
All right, are there any questions or comments?
We'll come to more meetings.
Yeah, come to more meetings.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. You got all that? Damn.
I was watching it, she was